Hi, welcome. My name is Chris Stewart. I'm the VP of EMEA and APAC here at Xactly. I'm responsible for the overall revenue performance and growth of our international region, a region which has been growing significantly over the last 12 months, both in terms of revenue, in terms of people, and all the ways in which we measure our business. We've been doing this in a period clearly of unprecedented times, working without any of the typical tributaries of a B2B sales organization, but rather working with virtual teams in almost wholly a digital environment. We have a great session today. We're bringing into the conversation one of our great customers, Dan Jacobs at Finaster, who runs operations for the commercial business across finance and revenue. Finaster have been going through their own amazing growth period, and Dan's going to share some insight from what he's also experienced. As we go through this conversation, we're going to look at three areas. Firstly, we're going to look at why, in order to grow, we had to just dispel any assumptions that we felt that we had about our business, about our people, and about our market. So what is it our people need to be successful? How do we maintain that motivation? How do we create behavioral change, which is in line with the expectations of our business, which has had to evolve and stay agile? Remove any assumptions of our own business and from an operational process, what works, whether that be in our business, how we go about demand generation, how we go through a sales process, how we implement our products, how we support and maintain and drive value into our customers. We had to dispel any assumptions that we had around our market, the competitors that we compete with day in day, which new competitors are coming in, partners, what do they expect from us? What do they need to be successful? Across all these three disciplines that are required to run a successful high growth revenue business, any bias, any intuition that we felt we had, any pulse that we were trying to take in order to make the right decisions, we had to just park and throw in the bin. That's not to say our intuition and our experience isn't still true. That's not to say that what has taken us this far, none of it still applies. Of course it does, but we can't assume. So we'll talk as we go through the conversation with Dan about how we use data at the heart of our business, how we drove a behavioral change whilst keeping the focus on driving a great culture, and how we set ourselves up to be truly agile. So as and when the change came quarter after quarter, we were continually able to adapt our business. So now let's welcome Dan into the conversation and hear about how things have gone in Finaster.
My name is Dan Jacobs, and I've worked with Finaster. So I'm my official role is as a head of sales operations and commercial finance at Finaster. Now, Finaster, if you aren't familiar, we're a company who does software for banks. Global banks, local credit unions in the US, small community banks all around the world. We have clients pretty much everywhere, every time zone. And we do core systems. So a bank's actual fundamental core architecture system of how they move money around and run their accounts for their clients, all the way to individual tactical usage tools like things that are utility tools for, say, treasury and capital markets, very specified type of financial software. So we came together as Finaster just a few years ago, about 4 years ago. We're owned by Vista Equity Partners, which is a equity firm, and they bought a prior company called Mises, which was largely international, headquartered in the UK. And then another company called D&H, which was an American company, largely doing business, 80–90% of their business was in the United States and Canada. And they merged those two to create Finaster. We competed against one another in the prior lives there before the merger, but very rarely. And it was really a synergy of two equals on both sides of the pond. So that's how Finaster came about.
Awesome. And I know being part of Vista brings with it its own growth expectations. And, Finaster has been growing, all guns blazing for, a good period of time now. And it's been a very positive last 12 months for you. So yeah, as I say, I think some really good insight from you here. And I think maybe just to kick things off as the conversation on how we shifted from this physical B2B world in order to grow a software company as we both are, to one where we're working with virtual selling teams and to a certain extent largely digitally. So the digital transformation's been bandied about for a long time, but probably in a lot more different domains than the world of B2B sales. And my perspective is this was probably a long time coming and has brought a lot of benefits with us. So I think maybe just as a real high level one to kick off with, how would you see the pace of the digital transformation of Finastra has changed over the last 12 months? And how would you kind of see that continuing at the same pace or less or more? Maybe
Sure. Sure. I think, and it's probably the same with most companies, including Xactly, is we were forced into the change all at once, right? Finastra, I mean, thousands and thousands of employees all across the world. We had dozens and dozens and dozens of offices all around the world. And in all honesty, Finastra was very much an office culture. When I started with Finaster 2 years ago, I moved to London. For a year, I stayed there and got to experience the pandemic British style, which was nice. But before coming back to the US, but that first year there, working out of our headquarters, it was, 8 to 10, 12 hours a day in the office every day, and that was very much our culture. And we enacted that way with our clients as well. It was very much a get on an airplane and travel. And we went to our clients and we did the board meetings in the boardroom with the big demos and, a SWAT team of salespeople and pre-sales people and everybody showing up for days of sales cycle events with clients. Because these aren't our software is not a quick little easy bolt-in, right? I mean, these are long-term implementations. It's very complex software to run a bank at a regional level or a global level. So a lot of due diligence was taken in that. Then pandemic hits, right? Well, we didn't know what was going on. I don't think anybody did. And literally from the time the lockdown notice came in, every single employee in Finaster was virtual the next day, that next Monday. I think the lockdowns, I think it was a Friday, if I remember correctly, where officially, the US, the UK, several other countries, they all piled on and said, okay, everybody locked down for 2 weeks. We had to go virtual immediately. Well, we were somewhat set up in that way in that we don't have desktops anymore. We have laptops. So everybody pretty much had a laptop and could just stay home. We already had a virtual architecture. We already used video conferencing. We're already in Office 365. We already use Teams as a file sharing and SharePoint and things like this. But what it did for us is when that came in, it was like, uh-oh, this isn't just a backup system anymore. This is the way we do business. So our IT department just piled on and really just came to the fore and put in all these systems at light speed. It may have been something we were talking about it for future strategically. How do we want to deal with this in the next 3 to 5 years? The pandemic just said, do it now, right? So we had to jump forward. And I have to say, it was fairly seamless because it was already something in our architectural stack. Just moving to that usage of it full time, it was okay, right? I think more than anything, what it's done is it's a personal change, right? It's been more to the human end of it, not so much the technological end of it, is how do we deal with one another when we're doing this, right? When we're not going for a coffee anymore, when we don't see each other in the hallway and get to stand off to the side for 5 minutes and, chat in between meetings, you lose that dynamic in our day. That has been probably one of the bigger changes that we've dealt with in our teams.
Yeah, I've noticed myself that communication can almost get quite transactional, and as you say, the importance of keeping that softness inside the pace of it in order to embrace some of the benefits of digital is easy overlooked. And I mean, how have you noticed the use of data as part of these last 12 months? Because I know in your role and the way you've operated, data's always been at the core of what you do. But have you noticed that other people in the business are leaning into being more data driven in their decisions than they once were? And do you see that changing over the next months?
I think, for Finaster, it's always kind of been there. And you said it correctly. In my day job, that's my life, right? I mean, my team has to start with data, use data during, and end with data. that's that's the key thing for us, especially running a sales forecast or doing strategic analysis for the future or territory analysis, things like this that we do regularly. We have to be concerned about data at all times. I would say that what it's done is the way we use data has changed a little bit, right? There's much more sharing of data, I feel, much more usage of the data from a lot of our partner teams. We've centralized around those core functions, and now that it is, again, we have team sites like crazy. We use Teams. So we went all in on Microsoft, and with the way Teams works with not only chats, but also with the team sites that you can load files to and share files, it makes it a very seamless approach for that. So now, instead of maybe seeing data in a conference room on a board that's being projected for 20 minutes of a meeting and then going away and not really looking at it, I think now people, yeah, we still do that in Teams, but now it's also linked to the Teams site, the chat site, the in the meeting invite. It's all readily available now, immediately able to get to it. So I think it causes it has, I've seen a lot more bubbling up of the data questions, right? So when we reviewed that and looking at the file after the meeting, could you tell me dot dot dot? A lot of people come in with more fine-tuned questions afterwards. So it's really kept us on our A game as far as the sales ops and commercial finance team.
Yeah, and one thing I've noticed from speaking to the revenue leaders, finance leaders over the last 12 months is as they've become much more data driven, they've also needed to almost force this culture of, well, let's make sure we look outside in. Let's make sure we keep the customer first in all the decisions and the thought processes that we make, because there's a danger that you can just end up living in your own data and it becomes a bit all about you. So it's, again, over the last 12 months, you mentioned a good example a second ago of, rather than now just jumping on a plane and forcing customers around your selling motion, have you started to notice a difference in the buyer behavior that, again, actually this whole pandemic
Oh,
has,
sure.
this last 12 months has benefited us all?
Yeah, I think there's been two behaviors. And it's interesting in a global company, I know as Xactly is as well, you probably see some of this. There's differences in regions. There's differences by country because the pandemic has impacted different regions and different countries in different ways. While it is global, it's not as bad here as it is there. And you have these changes. Well, what we've seen is there were two changes initially. Right when things came in, everybody froze. I think business just kind of froze. I mean, budgets were froze. We're not moving forward on the project right now. We'll get back to you. Stop calling me. We've got to deal with going virtual for 25,000 employees. These were the things we were hearing from our customers. And they were trying to figure out, I mean, you think of a bank, how many hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of branches does HSBC have, or Barclays, right? They're everywhere. They had to do the same thing all of us did, is all of a sudden they're all closed. What do? They have tens of thousands of employees supporting those areas. So that was the first change, was everything kind of froze and nobody knew what was going on. I think then secondarily, what ended up happening is we tried to stay involved when it was appropriate. Of course, we were dealing with every business was dealing with what we were dealing with, but we took that respectful step back, I think, for our clients. And we'll be in touch in the future was kind of our message. Then as it started to progress forward, people realized, okay, we're still in business. We're still moving forward. We've now got other opportunities that came up, and certainly in the finance world and banking, things changed because of the pandemic as well. Certainly in the United States, things changed massively. The governments got involved and started doing loans separately and underwriting things. And so whole new markets basically started to develop. The housing market changed quite a bit in a lot of different countries. So that has impacts to how banks go to market as well. All of those things were dynamically changing in our business. So as soon as people started to realize they were still in business and, okay, we are going to move forward, then we started acting and interacting in this virtual way, right? And again, as I said, because our architecture was there, we were able to approach our clients in this way. We still had the same teams involved. We still got the same 8, 9, 10, 12 people getting involved on a deal. Our pre-sales guys, our sales guys, our management staff, our executives. We're just doing it this way, right?
Yeah.
We were doing it through teams. And I would say initially there might have been a little clunkiness to it, right? And I'm sure most sales guys had to get used to that. Demo guys who do sales engineering or sales consulting, you got to get used to the full cycle demoing and using the tools that you're using. But that went away pretty quickly, and then it just started to flow, right?
Yeah.
We also saw a big difference in our in-flight projects, where we have a service organization of about 1,000 people that go around the world and will install our software and train our software directly on site with the banks in multiple locations, those types of things. And like I said, they can be year-long projects for some of our heavier software, even longer than that. We currently only have 4 people out of those 1,000 on site anywhere in the world. Everyone went virtual.
Yeah.
Completely. And that's services, that's implementation and training. So
And
not only our sales side, but that as well, going completely virtual using the tools was huge.
and you're still implementing on time, on budget, and it forces you to ask the question of, well, when we can start getting back on site, should we? And
Do we
how do
need
you
to?
start, especially when as a prudent, responsible business, you have to be responsible in your costs as much as you are
Yeah.
on winning business and generating revenue. So
Yeah.
when you think about the sheer amount of costs that used to go into sending people out into implementations and flying people around the world in those selling motions that we spoke about, and now we find ourselves in this almost bizarre situation where we're seeing an uplift in all our KPIs, the average order values, the win rates, enterprise deals, you name it. We're seeing everything business as usual still working, implementations going live on time, support working well, and yet our costs are going down. It's a fascinating challenge we're left with, which is, well, when we can go back in, should we? And how are you guys making some of those decisions?
A little bit of guesswork, a little bit
Yeah.
of forecasting, right? And I think it becomes very contextual now. Whereas before, it was just the way we did it, right? This is how we work. We're an enterprise sales company. We travel. We're always in the air. We're on the ground. We're with our customers. We meet with them personally. We do the same thing for implementation. It's just the way it is. We didn't really ever even offer the other type of an approach.
Yeah.
It just wasn't done, right? Now we're seeing, well, okay, you can actually do business this way. You can sell very complex software to a client virtually without ever shaking their hand, without ever being in their office, and you can even implement it. Now I think what will end up happening is it will turn more contextual, and I will say, okay, what's the reason we're really going there? Why do we think we need to? Does the client want us there? And I kind of feel, and I've already done this, I buy a lot of software myself too. I'm fine meeting individually over Teams or Zoom or whatever the tool is. Fine. I feel in my job, being tactical and approaching multiple things all the time. We're always juggling a lot of balls in the air. I don't really have 2 days to entertain people in my office anymore. I just don't have that ability. So for me, it works. I'm the buyer, right? And I will request that. I have for a while. I think a lot of our clients are going to start doing that. If we post-pandemic come out and can travel, hey, we'd like to bring the sales team in and sit down with you for 2 days, and they might go, why?
Yeah.
Why would we do that? Why not just keep doing this? I think we may get that request from customers. Now, there are other areas where I think it's still going to benefit us to be there, and certainly when you're involved internationally and you're bringing a team of so many nations together, different languages, different cultures, all coming together from, say, a bank and a client side, and our side also from Finastra, it does help a lot to actually be in person in those cases where languages may be a barrier or something like that, or where you have a very large team and it's very multidimensional. Even one day in an office just to put faces with names and shake hands can be a nice thing. And then maybe we'll go back to virtual from then on. But maybe it's such a thing as there's a kickoff meeting that is on site, and then everything else after that can be virtual. Those types of changes are being discussed now.
Yeah. I just love the fact, as you're saying, it's about what the customer wants, and it's about letting the customer decide what's on their terms, rather than just those, probably the bad old days where almost out of convenience, and it was the easy way of doing things, to shoehorn customers through our process, whether that be a sales one or an implementation one. Which I guess brings in the other hard aspect of this, is how do you drive behavioral change, with those out there in the field? Because you don't want to micromanage, you don't want to be running a business of just inspection. You want to, especially now where there's mental, there's emotional, there's stress in the people as they're living and working from home with Zoom fatigue and everything else. So you need to give them room to breathe, but you need to drive that behavioral change, as what worked in the past might not work going forward. So have you, over the last 12 months, had to shift some of the cadence approach, or some of the first line manager approach, even as an example, to just get that right balance, but still drive those behavioral changes you need?
Yeah. Well, we have actually heard that as feedback, to tell you the truth, from our employees. It's a little different on my end. Running the team I run, I'm in, I don't know, 20 different countries. Our team, we follow the sun, right? Because we support the sales staff and the pre-sales staff and the services staff. So we're everywhere. We have several people in countries all around the world. So we've tended to already be this way. My leadership meetings, my team meetings, we were in 7 different offices in 5 different time zones. So when I hold a staff meeting, it's going to be virtual. By the nature of the beast, it has to be, right? So I haven't really seen that kind of dynamic change on my team. However, feedback from a lot of the typically previously in-office staff, like a sales team, for instance. We have a headquarters in London, a lot of sales guys there, a lot of pre-sales people there. We have a lot of lead gen folks there. We call them business development reps. The BDR team was all there. You're always there culturally. You're a team. You sit next to each other. You do your job together. You talk about good things and bad things and aggravations during the day. And if you have a team meeting, you go into a conference room, you see each other. That, the feedback coming from the teams is, there was one comment earlier today where someone said that there was a meeting they just had. It was the first time they felt like they were a team again since the pandemic started.
Right.
And that was the comment made. And it was really the way they conducted the meeting,
Yeah.
and how they engaged people. I think that's one of the learnings that we've had, is just, I think you said it at the beginning, it's the niceties, it's the way we deal with each other when you're in person versus not. When you're presenting on a virtual digital platform like this, you can pretty much talk to the slides. You get into this motion of just speaking at the Zoom meeting, speaking at the Teams meeting, instead of actually having a discussion. And I think that takes a conscious effort from our team leaders to actually just have a conversation, right, with your team or the individual, and, banter, right?
Yeah.
Just those niceties have to still be there. And it's developing that motion. And this is also one of those changes, is I think, again, because we were all using these tools in some way, shape, or form previously. Usually, though, if you go back a year, 2 years, 3 years back, I think WebEx was the first system I've used 15 years ago, 13 years ago, whatever. So we've been using these things for a very long time. But again, they were tactical tools. So it was okay to treat that one meeting like a speak about the slides and pass out information and thank you very much, we're good, I'm out, and close down. Because I know I'm going to have those other types of meetings. Now that we're all this way, we have got to make that kind of concerted effort to bring the same style to our meetings that we would do in person to a virtual room. And that's one of the things that we've heard from our employees, is when they're feeling divorced from their team environment. They're feeling like they're on an island, right? So we've been working a lot on trying to give tips, and our management teams are sharing those tips on how to do these things, and make it a little more interactive and make it more real time and more personal.
Yeah, I think we went through a big process to just get people off script. I couldn't believe how easily it was for people to become a bit almost detached from their authentic selves. Because as you say, there's now an opportunity to script themselves through every single conversation. And what you lose from that is the personality of the company sometimes, because the
Definitely.
personality of the company is all about the people. And it is, I think, some of this behavioral change and this managing the culture whilst still taking the best out of the technologies is the challenge that we're going to, I suppose, be wrestling with for the next 12 months, as well as who knows, what pace we all get back into maybe how it used to be or how it will be. If there's one last question, and it's this may be a difficult one to sum up, but if you can give it a go. If there was one pleasant surprise that you've taken from the last 12 months, so we know we've lost a lot. We've lost that ability to just go for a beer and this kind of stuff. But if there was just one pleasant surprise that you think over the last 12 months has really contributed to Finastra having such a great 12 months in terms of revenue and growth, what would that be?
I think it was the acceptance of the change. Culturally, our people just said, okay, it is what it is. Let's move on. Let's get on with it. Culturally, we have a leadership team, our C-level, down to my peers at the VP level, down to our frontline managers who, by and large, everywhere around the world, no one stopped and said, well, there goes this year, we're done, right? Yeah. That was never accepted. It was not even in the conversation. We have to find a way to make this work for our clients. We have to find a way to grow the company. And we did. Highest growth year ever for Finastra in sales. And it's looking that way. Obviously, we have to end our fourth quarter here. We're on a June to May year. So we're going into our home stretch for the year, but that's how it's looking for us. So that was just, it's all the attitude. It was the leadership team just stepped up and said, nope, we're not going to fail. We're not going to let that happen. We'll adjust. We'll make it work. And then when you have those decisions that had to be made, like I mentioned, our IT team, a lot of times they're the unsung heroes. They're under the table. You don't really know they're there until something breaks and you need it fixed. And I have to say, it's just been seamless. The functional architecture of everything just worked and quickly and has continued to work. And of course, we partner with people like Microsoft, with companies like Microsoft, and they know how important this is, right? And they've definitely invested to shore up their tools. So it enabled us to support the business. But that I would say it was just the attitude and the drive to not fail. We weren't going to let it happen.
Well, I'll tell you what a great place to finish. It's as a sentiment, the will to just make it happen, and we will not fail, alongside the unsung heroes of the business, is leading to the growth that you've gone through. So it's again, great to have you here. Great to have you as a customer. Great to see such success, and I wish you all the best for the next few weeks as you close out what will be, I'm sure,
thank you,
great year. So thank you again for joining today, Dan.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it. Good to see you.